our sister church and our mission trips and our experiences on the mission trip to El Salvador. And before we start, I'd like to say a prayer. You join me. Good and loving God, thank you for this day and for this opportunity we have to share our experiences as part of a mission trip to Delegation to El Salvador. We thank you for the relationships that we've had with Buenas Nuevas Lutheran Church in El Paso for over 30 years. We pray for our sisters and brothers in El Paso as well as the nation of El Salvador as a whole. Speak through us today as we share how we've been blessed by our experiences while on a mission trip to our sister church. Awaken in us a desire once again to send a mission delegation to El Paso to worship again with our sisters and brothers in our sister church, to renew relationships with old friends, and to make new friends in El Salvador. We ask in Jesus' name, in el nombre de Jesus, amen. So what we'll do is each of the folks here, our speakers, will give just a little reflection on a portion of what it means to be on a mission trip to El Salvador. And then if we have time, we'll draw a little deeper into some of our personal experiences, or we can, I see some delegates out here in the congregation. We can ask you guys to, if you wish to share with us as well. Do you have a question, Don? That will become, when we get to Ted, that will become apparent. Okay. So we'll start with Fleta, and I'll just pass the microphone. And then when it comes time, if you have questions, I'll have to bring the mic to you so that the people online will be able to hear your question and such. So there'll be a little walking around. So.
Good morning. Well, I'm supposed to, hopefully this isn't too loud, I'm supposed to talk a little bit about the organization called CRISPAS, which is the group that we have gone through on our past delegations, most of our past delegations. As some of you know, we've been partners with our sister church for over 30 years, which is amazing. I am an original member of that team. I've been on it the full time that we've had a sister church ministry team, so that's amazing to me that it's been 30 years. CRISPAS is a great organization. It stands for Christians for Peace in El Salvador, and they're a ecumenical, faith-based organization that tries to bridge the communities of El Salvador with other countries like in the U.S. to build relationships. They're really all about relationship building. So I've been asked to explain a little bit about what an encounter delegation is, because that's primarily what CRISPAS does. CRISPAS doesn't focus on project-based missions, which is kind of the traditional mission form where you go and you build a building or you dig a well, and we've done some of that, but CRISPAS's focus is encounter delegations. And so this is their wording, an encounter delegation, the major focus is working for justice rather than working for charity. And I like that distinction, that when you go on an encounter delegation, like most of us did, it's really about establishing a relationship with people, learning about the issues that are important in their lives, learning about the challenges that they are experiencing, and working towards finding ways that we can help promote justice in some of those situations and just make our connections deeper. So rather than going on a mission trip that's primary focus is charity, nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with going and building a building or digging a well or teaching Sunday school to a group of kids. Those are all awesome things to do. But it changes the focus of why you're there. If you're going down with the express intent of educating yourself as to what the issues are in a third world country, just making connections with the people, it's just a little different focus. And that's been our primary delegation focus as we've gone through CRISPAS over the years. I think that's probably all I need to say about Encounter. So I'll pass it on to Teresa.
So unlike Fleta, I started a little later with the Sister Church ministry. I have supported Sister Church through donations and the scholarships and everything through all the years. And I'll just have to say we're really, really fortunate today that this topic is adult ed when we have Kyle Smith here. So Kyle she is our El Salvadorian. Her heart is with the people of El Salvador, and she's the reason I had any interest really probably in Sister Church because of what she did, and I admired totally her dedication to going on numerous delegations and just being so comfortable with the people of El Salvador. They were her family, and she was their family. And I didn't really understand how that would work, and I never thought I would want to do that myself. I just admired her for it. But I think through her persistence and, well, you really should go, that I finally got up the nerve to do it, I would say. So what I'm talking about is the logistics of the delegation trip, which is probably good for me because I worry about logistics. And I like my creature comforts. I like my routine. I like my bed and my bathroom. Those things are important to me. And it's not that I've never, done things outside of that realm, because I've done retreats, where you're in a dorm room and, share facilities and people who snore and, all of that stuff. I probably was one of them, but, and then I've also been on band trips, with the kids where you sleep on a gym floor or on the bus and things that aren't comfortable. But this was a little different. It's more, you're going out of your comfort zone into a foreign country where you don't know the culture, the language, the people, what they eat, what the situation is. So, so logistics were important. And I took great comfort in knowing that Fleta was going. She was going to be our leader. She'd been there. She knows it, what's going on. Kyle was going, so that was my rock there. And Barry was going to be there, so he was our protector. And, so it was a good crew. I trusted in the crew. And my daughter, yeah, she went along too. So we had a group of young people, so that if there was any technology issues, I know they would handle it. So things were good with the group, but those are things you can't necessarily rely on entirely. But I will say that the whole organization of a delegation is very thought out. It's very planned, very prepared for. There's fundraising. There's numerous times that our group is getting together and learning things about El Salvador, deciding what we want to do. We tried to learn Spanish, not real successfully, but we tried a little bit of that. But just all of the pieces are very well planned out, and I think you can take great comfort in that, and knowing that it's not just a whim, it is well thought out. So the first of those logistics was the translator, and that was provided by Chris Paso. And we had Andy, and she was so delightful. She was just a bundle of energy, young, adorable, big smile, and just such a blessing. And I know Kyle has been on many trips where she hasn't had the luxury of a translator all of the time, so I can't imagine doing it without, but she was, just amazing. When the El Salvadorians were speaking to us, she was translating with emotion, I would say, too, that you really she wasn't just saying the words, she was repeating the emotion of it. And there were times where she was crying. It was just a great blessing. So there's that. And she was with us almost all the time. So we never had to worry about not understanding something or worrying about what was happening. We also had a driver that was designated to us, which was also a huge blessing. I did do a trip to Mexico with the youth group, where I had Craig Suchita and Kirk Fu driving white vans, into Mexico. Not, inconspicuous at all. 2 white vans with white drivers, and so I trusted them, but I felt much better with the driver that we had, who knew the roads, of course, and especially when we were traveling up to this mountain top to see Pastor Matias. The road was not exactly, easy. I don't know how he did it, how he got us there, and back, but he did. So it was great. He was there every day. That was just part of our routine. So that was taken care of. Then the other thing was the accommodations. So part of the time we stayed in a guest house in San Salvador, and the other part we stayed in our sister church community in El Pasanel with families. So that was a little bit, like I say, out of my comfort zone there. The guest house was lovely. Nothing fancy, certainly, but lots of bedrooms and bathrooms. We would share 2 or 3 to a room. So very comfortable. And our host there, Sonia, was lovely. She would greet us at the door when we came back each evening, and send us off with a hug, and just lovely, and had wonderful meals, breakfast always, and sometimes a dinner there. And oh yeah, not mine. washed clothes for us. I said, I didn't get mine washed. How did that happen? Yeah, just really took care of us, and was just very fun. And then staying in El Pasanel, it's a very different experience. I know sometimes some of the delegations stayed in the church. This time we stayed with families. And, there was, either 4 of us or 2 of us with different families. And, oh my goodness, they're so gracious and give you anything. Certainly they don't have a lot, but give up their, rooms and give you the best of what they have in the time that we spent with them. I think Fleta and I slept on the floor. Kyle slept in a bed. And it was an outhouse for the bathroom, and very simple surroundings, but they would cut a coconut, which is a precious commodity because they use it to make ice cream, sell ice cream to make money for the family, but they would cut a coconut, and so that we would have the experience of drinking the coconut milk, and it was very special, and chocolate bananas, which again were something very precious to them, and but what they wanted to share it with us. So it was good. It was hard in some ways, but also very easy. Like I say, they're just incredibly gracious. The other things, I think I talked a little bit about meals. It was delicious. It was just amazing. Again, they're certainly providing the best that they have for us. The meals in the guest house were, just basic foods, lots of rice and beans and tortillas and eggs, kind of probably not a lot of meat, but that was fine with me. I was good with that. Plantains, just kind of what they have, but it was all very well done and very good. When we were in El Paz now, we had pizza and we had hamburgers, so they cooked for us what we probably are used to as well. But yeah, it was great. I think anybody would enjoy it. I think, there were also made accommodations for allergies. My daughter Kendra has a tree nut allergy, so we had to make sure she didn't have nuts in anything. And Jana had to be gluten-free. Yeah, and stuff. And so, again, just, planning in advance for those things, able to accommodate that. And then as far as health and safety issues, if there were times when we were driving and you'd see armed, police on the corners and stuff, that it looked a little scary at times. But I never felt at all unsafe, with the driver that we had, knowing where to go, not being at the wrong place at the wrong time, and in the communities. And we were always together as a group, so we didn't wander out. You didn't wander off by yourself. That just, except for Kyle, but she knows what she's doing, so we let her a little bit. But the rest of us were together, and at least in smaller groups, if nothing else, at all times. So that was good. And, as far as health issues, certainly there was, the accommodations for, meals and allergies and all of that stuff. But Fleta can probably talk better about health issues in terms of being more concerned about others and how we would take care of them if anything happened. But initially, Melissa Susli Flaherty was going to go on the trip, and that would have been a great comfort to have a doctor with us. But we were all fine. We all did well. So had a little bit of sickness in our group, but nothing that wasn't overcome. So it was good. Oh, yeah, and now, certainly, the COVID has been, a deterrent to being able to go on any delegations, but they're must be over it as much as we are and stuff. So anyway, I would say it's a blessing to go, and these others are going to talk more about what we learned and the people we experienced.
Thanks, Teresa. I'm not sure where to begin when I think about the trip to El Salvador. We were told by Crispus, the first meeting we had, that trip would likely change our lives, and it certainly did, in every sense, from the arrival at night in darkness. I remember looking out the van windows as we were headed to the guest house and seeing this tangle of electric wires hanging from every pole, and it just looked like spaghetti. I wondered how in the world power got to folks. And then when we went to El Salvador, as Teresa mentioned, it was kind of intimidating to notice that almost every business had a long gun toting guard standing in front of the entrances. And we learned that, many of those were hired by the businesses, and many were paying for protection at exorbitant prices as well. But when we went to El Paisnel, to our sister church, to Buena Vista Luterano, and 29 children greeted us, singing, giving their names, telling what school they attended. Many of them went to public school, 1823, July 15th. That seemed to be the name, and it was not only the grade school, it was the high school. And we learned that educationally, they have to switch and go half days between the little kids in the older kids. So when you hear third world country and begin to get a grasp of what people in some other lands are up against, that was the life-changing part of this experience. The education that we received to the plight of the peoples of El Salvador, and unfortunately knowing that our government played a role in some of the horrors that they've experienced. It was bombs made in the U.S. that were dropped on people who were rebelling against a very corrupt government. And, you know, 3 past presidents of El Salvador absconded with millions of dollars from their treasury, left their people in huge indebtedness. And sadly, the current presidency has not been good for our sister church or the folks in the El Paisnal community that have been very supportive of our sister church. And I think Christos gets a lot of credit for doing a wonderful job of bringing us to awareness of the ecological crisis in El Salvador. I hope somebody mentions that Walmart came in and demanded that they have water for their restrooms around the clock. And so when Walmart was open, the local residences around their water was shut off to assure that Walmart had water. We learned that only 2% of the water in El Salvador is drinkable. Despite wonderful rivers and streams, U.S. and Canadian mining interests have so polluted their waterways that their water is full of toxic metals. It's really tough to provide clean water in El Salvador. But I digress. My job is to talk about our worship times there, which were jubilant, which were joyful. It's amazing to me that among the poorest people on earth are some of the most joyful Christians on earth. And they sang loudly. Pastor Chima has an incredibly beautiful and loud voice, and when he leads worship, you hear that booming voice just really praising God. And it was intimidating to me because he invited me to share the message on Sunday. And on July 31st, the last time I preached to you, I wore the stole that I purchased for preaching there when I got that opportunity on our delegation. And that was a wonderful highlight. Linda Carafa led communion that day. And it was just really touching to relate to these people in that worship leadership. But I noted in wrapping up, any one of our team could have brought the message that day. Every one of us had been profoundly touched by our experiences there. One of the early deeply emotional encounters for me was when we stopped on our way from El Paisnal to San Salvador at Richard, bring up that slide of the memorial to Rotilla Grande. This was at the roadside, and it's a memorial to a priest who was one of the first killed. If you see the movie Romero, which I hope is still available on Netflix, you will see a scene depicting the assassination of Rotilla Grande and his driver on the same road we were traveling where this memorial stands, as a testimony to a devout priest who pleaded on behalf of the poor people of El Salvador to a corrupt government and was assassinated. At that time, Oscar Romero was pretty much comfortably in his role as a priest. But over the next few months, in losing his dear friend, Rotilla Grande, Romero came to see the real corruption and the bitter oppression of the people of El Salvador that would lead to his own assassination while performing Mass and communion in a church. And we visited the church and saw the site where a driver pulled up in front and with a long rifle shot and killed Oscar Romero while he was performing the Eucharist. It was a very humbling experience. and then to go to the Cathedral of San Salvador and see the crypt where Oscar Romero is buried, and to see the people coming there and praying and weeping as they prayed, and to see the incredibly powerful symbol of hope that his life had come to mean to them. And you know, we're thankful that a couple years ago, Pope Francis led in making Oscar Romero a saint, him being sanctified by the Roman Catholic Church. And Richard, go on to the next slides that kind of show some. This is the church itself as it was at that time. Worship there, as I said, was jubilant. It was joyful. It was filled with happiness and love. Next slide, Richard. Next one. Go on to the next slide, if you can. Okay. I wish we could read this. It's not large enough print for me to read, but it is Oscar Romero's testament. It's some of his last words when he could foresee that he might be assassinated. It is an incredibly powerful statement where he will gladly give his life for the sake of his people and to better the plight of those he had loved and come to serve. And we were fortunate to visit at the University of El Salvador in San Salvador the memorial to Romero. Go ahead, Richard, and show the next one. Show the next one, please. This is our translator, Andy, sharing with us there at the memorial to Oscar Romero. And give us the next one. You can't make out that top picture, but that is a scene of the hundreds of thousands of people that came together for Oscar Romero's funeral. And unfortunately, 8 snipers, sadly government snipers, posted atop the roofs of buildings, fired down into that crowd, killing 9 more people. So our trip to El Salvador was deeply emotional because you really began to feel the sorrow and plight of people who've been pawns in international games. The U.S. supporting a corrupt government, the Russians supporting the rebels, and the poor people of the land, tens of thousands of whom either disappeared or were murdered. And we were dealing with their orphan children, with their spouses, with those trying to put back together lives that had been shattered by war and travail. Yet, the time came to worship, and I want to share just what I wrote wrapping up at the end after that message that I got to deliver. Yesterday, October 28th, brought to an end our visit to our sister church, Iglesia Evangelica Luterano Buena Vista. If parting were ever such sweet sorrow, it was amid the hugs and holas and hasta luegos shared between team members and the children, youth, and adults with whom songs of joy and tears of empathy were exchanged. The service may have brought an end to our visit, but it in no way brings closure. After our immersion in the sorrows and laughter shared with our courageous sisters and brothers, we are ruined for life, in the words of one of the founders of Crispos, Dean Brackley, S.J. I think it was a wonderful opportunity, and I hope many of you get to go to El Salvador on the next delegation visit.
El Salvador will make you fall in love and then break your heart. I want to start way back in Spokane. Diane and I were invited to a gathering of some Whitworth friends, Whitworth College friends. And the conversation got to travels that they had done as leaders and student trips. And these folks had been everywhere. And everybody in the room had been everywhere, except for Diane and I. We were quiet and listened. And on the way home, agreed that maybe it was time for us to go somewhere and do something, try to get out of our comfort zone. And that sounded good. I felt much more righteous for having said it. And went home and forgot about it until Gary Proctor called about 3 days later. I don't know how Gary was listening in our car, but he said, would you like to go to El Salvador? We're doing this trip, and your name has come up. And I thought, that's nice, we'll talk about it. And when I talked with Diane, she said, yes, we'll go. And I said, wait a minute, I just wanted to talk about it. I would collect more points. and so we did, and we've never been sorry. The request that, from Fleta for me is to talk about a number of side trips and people we met. But I just chose one. I chose the most powerful person I've met, I think, in this lifetime, and that is Sister Margaret, or Sister Peggy O'Neill, this lady with a Jersey accent, who was a Catholic nun who had been 25 years head of a department at Marquette University, who then went to take a vacation and visit El Salvador. And this was during the war. She went, and she never came home. She's still there and still doing what she does, which is to run a school which is predicated on the basis that arts, that music and drawing and dance and those things will fight war, will stop war, I should say. And she had a thriving school going in the town of, I never can say it right, Sophie Toto, right? Sochi Toto. And we had the good fortune to visit with her, and we marched into a conference room, sat around the table, and she just talked. And I just listened and fell in love. I even told her so. I said, you're just wonderful. And she was. She touched something in me that I just haven't forgotten. There's a story I hesitate to tell, one that she shared, and the reason I hesitate is because it chokes me up. But here goes. During the revolution, the fighting was everywhere, but especially there in that area. It was kind of the center of conflict. In fact, the city was empty for a while. The locals had been driven out. And there was a soldier, a young man, who was trying to, well, he had joined the rebel forces and was captured by government troops and beheaded. And the soldiers who beheaded this young man, they did this a lot. They left the head outside the gate of the community as a warning. The mother was distraught, of course, as any mother would be, and time went on, and then someone hung a picture of John the Baptist, or hung that famous painting of the head of John the Baptist, and put it on a wall. And when Sister Peggy saw that, she said, "We can't do that to the mom. We got to get that down." But they didn't. For some reason, that didn't happen, and the mother came in and wept, but the weeping was tears of joy. She said, now I know, or excuse me, now I have someone who knows what I'm feeling. So, well, I get a little choked up, but that's the story. It's just something, the demonstration of love that that I saw there just carried me away. Sister says, the sister says, we're telling people to resist violence, but how do you creatively resist? How do you deal with the fears and the processes you go through to resist gang recruitment or to resist running for the easy way out? Look, she said, there will always be violence in me, in each of us. But there's an art with touching your own violence. How do I do it? The older I get, the more I think the Beatitudes are about geography. Where do I stand? Am I on the one side of people who are longing or the other?
Well, yesterday, we had our flea market. And this gentleman he was walking around our booths and he noticed, oh, El Salvador. And he said, well, I'm from El Salvador. I have a good friend who's from El Salvador. And I think it was Fleta that said, well, we're raising money for our scholarship students, and we support these students through our sister church association. And he said, I'm going to call my friend. So he got out his phone, and he called his friend, and he said, hey, there's this group at this flea market that's raising funds for El Salvador. He said, you should come and see this. So an hour or so went by, and his friend came. And as it turned out, he's a teacher in the Spokane Public Schools. He's a Spanish teacher at Rogers High School. And he was just very forthcoming, and just really excited about what we were doing. So, he, left a donation, and he said that he really, stresses to his students that education to El Salvador students is so important. And he said there are so many that don't get to go to school, if they don't have the financial support. So that, I just thought, God works in mysterious ways, and he came to our flea market. So, it's been about 40 plus years now that we have been associated with a children's group. And it was one Sunday we came home from church, and our youngest daughter said, they were talking about poor people from other countries. And she said, we could really, if we just ate one meal a day on Sunday, she said, we could take that money and send it to someone. So anyway, that's how we got associated with the Christian Children's Fund. And then it was, well, then we got the phone call. Oh, no, in our former church, we had Moses Pulai, who was the the president of Whitworth College Student Association. And he spoke to our deacons committee, and he was explaining to us that he was the only member in his very large family who had been educated. And he said it was because of that $25 monthly commitment to his family that he was able to go to school. And so that too, you know, was just a reinforcement that, yeah, we need to continue, you know, our support and then, you know, the incident with Gary Proctor calling and I just thought, you know, the time is now, you know, to do it. And so that's why we signed up for the trip. We were fortunate to have Mike Donovan, who creatively showed us how to build these drums out of material, this flat wood material that he got from his work. So the guys, you know, so anyway, we went down to El Salvador with a suitcase full of materials to make these drums, and we were pretty careful about collecting other items so that everyone, you know, of different ages, you know, could have something, you know, to participate. And like David said, this Sunday service was just a very joyful and emotional experience. Greg Seeley participated in the service that Sunday and communion and it was a very emotional time. You know, the sanctuary there was small, but it was standing room only. And there were just a couple of windows along the side, and there were families that gathered outside. These little ones were perched on the windowsills, and yeah, it was truly a monumental experience. And afterwards, then we all went to the grassy football field and had watermelon and games, and so just a real jubilant time. I just, I'm grateful for the people here who continue to support, you know, the programs, the scholarship programs. I've been doing this for a number of years now, and when I started, I think the first year we did 57 scholarships, but you know, last year, you know, we did 100, and all of our dollars, as you know, go to support the children. You know, we don't have, you know, that the middleman, you know, that we have to pay, you know, to distribute the money. So it's, yeah, every dollar goes directly to the school. And when we get, you know, we send the scholarship money down quarterly, and when the students, you know, receive that, you know, we always get the thank you notes and the letters, and when we get them, you know, they're in Spanish, so I take the letters over to Whitworth University, and there's a professor there who has her students, you know, interpret, convert them to English, and they're just, you know, very sweet, heartfelt letters. We try to, in past years, in our thank you notes, we've tried to include some of those, you know, to our contributors. I just, it really is an experience, you know, to read those letters and the gratefulness that, you know, that those students have for the support that they get from us. So thank all of you for that.
I want to thank you all for participating and sharing. Have we generated any questions from the group that like to ask? Or would anybody that's gone, delegates that are sitting out in the audience would like to share something? I'll be glad to bring the mic to you. Got a few minutes. Everybody's bashful. Oh, a second.
I just have a question about the timing of the trip. How long is it, and when do you usually go on the trip?
Well, that's a really good question. Different delegations have done it differently. We've sent many delegations down over the years. And so that's one interesting thing, is that some of us will have different experiences because the delegations are different. Generally between 7 and 10 days. I know I went on one that was 7 days, and I believe our last one was 10 days that I was on. And timing is up to the delegation. So when a delegation starts to form, when there's interest and there are a group of people who are interested, generally we'll have meetings and see kind of what people are thinking and what times of the year are good for them. I've been on one in July, and one, that's when I was teaching, and so there were a lot of us that could only go during the summer. And then the last one I went on was in October, because that was the need of that particular group. So it really does vary. I think just in general, I'd like to just acknowledge that many, many people have gone on our delegations from our congregation, and we've each been touched and blessed in different ways. So, yeah. Any other? So that's just the basic nuts and bolts. I just will make one quick comment that for each of us, the highlights are going to be different. And since I've been on 2 delegations, the highlight of each trip is different for me. I would say the first time I went down, we did not have the same experience. I know Deb and Kyle can relate to this. We did not have the same experience with Romero's tomb that the last one did. When we went down and we were at the cathedral, we had to scrounge up a caretaker to unlock a door, to go down dark stairs to a dark, gloomy basement. And that was where Romero was buried. And we stood around in this kind of, basement. And I always say, oh, this is a hard one. I always say I got to walk in the footsteps of saints. Because the last time when we went, and it's all open to the public, and it's all lit, and there are beautiful banners and pews where you can sit and pray, and his tomb is just incredibly beautifully decorated. And honestly, I'm not convinced that's where he's buried. I think he's still over in that other dark corner. We're so grateful for everyone who supports our missions, but there's no substitute for going there yourself. And I know not everyone will be able to, but if there is any chance that is in your heart, there is no greater experience that I've ever had in my life. So I just had to get that out there. We can go back to questions.
She's stronger than I am. Yes, Don, just a second.
I just want to talk about, just briefly, the delegation that Gene and I went on was a delegation where we planted trees for the people. And it was interesting because we carried the trees and the shovels, and we walked from house to house and did this. And the kids, I mean, gosh sakes, they were just following us, This one little girl who is now about, I don't know, Kyle knows how old she is. She must be 20 or 21 now or something like that. She just attached herself to me, and we still support her, trying to get her, on her feet so she's been to English school, and I guess she's going to school for more English. And I want to get her in a position where she can support herself decently and whatnot. But anyway, we're planting these trees, and we went to this one house, and this young woman was probably, 30, 35, something like that. And we're digging this hole in her yard to plant this tree. And this woman had a skirt on. I mean, she was nicely dressed. Looked like you, Fleta, with your skirt. But anyway, all of a sudden, she dropped down to her knees and started pulling the dirt out of that hole with her hands, because this meant so much to her, because she knew that when that tree grew up, she was going to have, it was an orange tree. She was going to have oranges for her family and oranges to sell to other people. And it's an image that I'll never forget.
Thanks, Todd. Any other questions or I'm going to share? Well, this presentation is going to be on YouTube, so I would recommend that if you know someone who might want to go on a delegation, to have them watch the YouTube and kind of get a little information of, like we've shared here, and then either talk to any one of us, talk to Pastor Megan. At some point in time, we will have a meeting and try to find 10, 20 people that are interested, maybe even 6 or 7. But it's important that we show them that we care and go down there. Sending money is one thing, but our presence is important as well. So without a further ado, I think we are adjourned. Thank you all again. Go in God's blessing.